let's go into that, because that's actually one of the topics I wanted to go into further. Was, let's talk about exactly, like, other than like the equipment, and what else about gear like makes geared lifting versus raw lifting kind of like a whole different ball game in terms of like how you train, like the performance of the lifts, like the competition standards for like what is a squat, like all of this stuff. Like, what's the differences?
The standards are the same. You can go and do an equipped, like you can go into you can go into any competition. Typically, I mean, it's a bit different. If you're in single ply, you can walk out a squat more easily than if you're in multiply. Generally speaking, if you're in multiply, you would want to go to a meet that has a monolift and that has one in the warm-up room, because there's no walking out involved.
Right, exactly. So I guess what I was getting at is, like, when you're doing equipped lifting, you generally use what's called a monolift, which is, well, maybe you could probably do a better job of describing it than I do.
It's basically just a squat rack that allows you to not have to walk out the squat. So as you stand it up, somebody is holding on to a lever, I guess, like a handle, and it just will swing up. There's usually like a weighted arm, involved. And then, so the handles will go back, the arms will go back, and then you're able to be free from the rack and be able to squat right there on the spot without having to walk anything back.
Right. Versus in raw lifting, it's like how you would normally train if you just go to the gym and squat. You have to, like, take your bar out of the rack, walk back a couple feet and then do your squats. Versus in equipped lifting, you don't have to, because the equipped lift, you're really dealing with like enormous amounts of weight that are often a lot more than raw. And I guess in my mind anyway, I've always seen like geared lifting is more of like they're just trying to push the absolute limit of what the human body can actually move in terms of weight. So like, we're talking about when you have to walk out a squat, by definition, you have to do like an extra step. So it's going to limit the amount of weight you can lift slightly just by the fact that you have to walk it out. Is that accurate in saying?
Yeah, it makes sense. And also, when you're in multiply, so a lot of the multiply is very like central nervous system based. Like you're taxing the crap out of your central nervous system, whereas like you're technically adding, like, because like of the pole vault like reference, you're adding a piece of equipment to your body that allows you to technically put more weight on your spine. It does, like, when you sit into a squat in a suit, you're sitting into canvas, and therefore the canvas wants to push you away from it. Like you need to push into the canvas. Therefore, you're ultimately able to overload your body. Like if I squat 540 in a suit peaked, I'm probably squatting, maybe, this is me like as a very good like squatter technician, like I can get, some people can get 200 to 500 pounds out of a squat suit if they're doing it right. And they're
500 pounds.
I don't know, but don't quote me on the 500, but for sure at least 200.
Yeah.
Depending on the person,
I've heard people say like it adds like an extra 100, but like you said, if you know how to use it properly, I could definitely, I can see how it adds a lot more than, it can certainly add a lot more than that.
Yeah. And like those unlimited shirts, crazy, dude. Like dudes are like benching like 400 raw, and then they're going off and benching 800 in the stupid thing.
Yeah.
Well, it's not stupid, but you know what I mean? Like it's insane. It's just such an overload. Your central nervous is shot. So going back to the monolift thing, it's like if you're standing it up, there's no way like you're going to be able to walk back like 300 pounds more than what you actually, like what your body can do, and without risk of extreme injury. And I think that's where the danger and the excitement part comes in. And that's how it becomes like an extreme sport, and the hardcore side of it comes up. Because if you look back into the history of powerlifting, there was only equipped lifting to start. Like people think that raw, the raw is like what start is, because there's nothing, right? So you only imagine that there'd be more added to it as you go. But at the beginning in the 80s, it was all gear, like everybody was wearing it. And then it wasn't until the early like 2000s when those geared guys were getting kind of like old and were trying new things and stuff, that like the raw things started happening, and people realized how easy it was to just go into the gym and not spend 3 hours on squatting, especially if you're with a crew, right? So it was a lot easier and more functional for a lot of, which is totally understandable. If you're going to the gym to just work out, you don't want to spend like that time. So, and with the internet and stuff and it becoming popular, it was just natural that the raw stuff really took off, and the gear is almost considered old school at this point.